Good afternoon, everybody. We saw the introduction yesterday. Today we will see the derangements of homeostasis and hemodynamics. Synopsis: we look into homeostasis, hemodynamic disorders, thrombosis, embolism, infarction and shock. Today we will concentrate only on homeostasis. What is homeostasis? Homeostasis in general sense refers to stability or balance in a system. It's the body's attempt to maintain a constant internal environment. The normal composition of internal environment consists of the following components, that is water and electrolytes. So that is the composition of the internal environment, water and electrolytes. First we will see water. This is the distribution of the body fluid compartments. 40% is minerals, fats and proteins. 33% is the intracellular fluid, and the remaining 27% is the extracellular fluid, that includes plasma 5%, interstitial fluid 12% and others 10%. The total body water in an adult is distributed into two main compartments of body fluids, and these are intracellular fluid compartment and extracellular fluid compartment. In the intracellular fluid compartment, it comprises about 33% of the body weight, the bulk of which is contained in the muscles. In the extracellular fluid compartment, this constitutes around 27% of the body weight. Included in this are the following four subdivisions of extracellular fluid. One is interstitial fluid, intravascular fluid or the blood plasma, mesenchymal tissues and transcellular fluid. Interstitial fluid, which also includes the lymph, constitutes the major proportion of ECF, that is around 12% of the body weight. The intravascular fluid or the blood plasma comprises about 5% of the body weight. The mesenchymal tissues such as dense connective tissue, cartilage and bone contain body water that comprises about 9% of the body weight. Transcellular fluid, that is the fluid contained in the secretions of secretory cells, like for example the glands in the skin or the salivary glands, and this constitutes around 1% of the body weight. So that's about water. Going on to the electrolytes. These are ions that carry an electrical charge. We have two kinds of ions, cations and anions. Cations carry a positive charge, whereas anions carry a negative charge. The intracellular compartment, the major components of cations are potassium and magnesium, and the anions are phosphates and proteins. Whereas in the extracellular compartment, the major cation is sodium and the anions are chlorides and bicarbonates. We will now see the acid-base balance. What is an acid? It's a molecule or ion which is capable of giving off a hydrogen ion. And a base is a molecule or ion which is capable of taking up hydrogen ions. So basically, acids are hydrogen ion donors, whereas bases are hydrogen ion acceptors. What is a pH? The pH is the degree of hydrogen ion concentration, and that is kept constant at 7.4 plus 0.05 plus or minus 0.05. Buffer system. Buffers are substances which have either a weak acid and a strong base, or a strong acid and a weak base, and limit the change in hydrogen ion concentration to the normal range. So basically they resist any change in pH. How is the pH of blood and acid base balance regulated? They are regulated by three defenses: first line, second line, third line. The first line defense are the blood buffers. We just now saw the buffers resist to any change in the pH. Second line defenses are respiratory mechanism, where the gaseous exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen take place. Third line of defense is the renal mechanism, where all the carbonic acids are eliminated. We have two kinds of pressures. They are the normal fluid pressures. One is the osmotic pressure and the hydrostatic pressure. Osmotic pressure is the pressure exerted by the chemical constituents of the body fluids. Hydrostatic pressure is the capillary blood pressure. Looking into the disturbances of body fluids, the common derangements of the body fluids are edema, dehydration, overhydration. Edema, dehydration, overhydration. We will first look into edema. The Greek word edema means swelling. By definition, it means abnormal and excessive accumulation of free fluid in the interstitial tissue spaces and serous cavities. Free fluid in body cavities and free fluid in interstitial space. If fluid accumulates in the peritoneal cavity, we call it as ascites. Suppose it's in the pleural cavity, we call it as the hydrothorax or pleural effusion. In the pericardial cavity, we call it as the hydropericardium or pericardial effusion. Free fluid in interstitial space. The fluid lies free in the interstitial space between the cells. In the case of edema in the subcutaneous tissues, momentary pressure of finger produces a depression known as pitting edema. I will show you a picture on that. The other variety is non-pitting or solid edema, in which no pitting is produced on pressure. Example, like in myxedema or in elephantiasis. So you can see two pictures over here. One is a pitting edema, where if you give a compression using your finger, you will find a pitting as shown. The other one is non-pitting edema, like you see in elephantiasis. Edema may be of two main types, localized or generalized. Localized when limited to an organ or limb. Example, lymphatic edema, inflammatory edema, allergic edema. Generalized edema, we also call it as anasarca or dropsy. This happens when it is systemic in distribution. Example, as in renal edema, cardiac edema, or nutritional edema. Nutritional edema may be due to some nutritional deficiency. These are the two kinds of edema, localized and generalized. This edema fluid can be either transudate or exudate. Transudate as in cardiac and renal disease, and exudate as in inflammatory edema. So differences I will show you right now. These are the differences between transudates and exudates. By definition, transudates are just the filtrate of blood plasma without changes in endothelial permeability, whereas exudates are edema of inflamed tissue associated with increased vascular permeability. So in transudate there is no endothelial permeability, but here there is vascular permeability. And character, if you see, they are non-inflammatory transudates, but exudates are inflammatory. Protein content is low in transudate and high in exudates. Glucose content in transudate it is same as in plasma, but in exudate it is low. Specific gravity also will be low in transudates and high in exudates. pH will be more than 7.3 in transudates and less than 7.3 in exudates. And if you see the cells, few cells, mainly mesothelial cells and cellular debris is concerned with. In exudate, many cells, inflammatory as well as parenchymal cells. Some of the examples of transudates, we can see it in congestive cardiac failure, edema and congestive heart cardiac failure. And exudates, you can see purulent exudates such as pus. What is the pathogenesis of edema? There is decreased plasma oncotic pressure, that is the osmotic pressure exerted by the proteins of the extracellular fluid. It is the force that pushes the fluid into the blood capillaries. That is your oncotic pressure. So the oncotic pressure will be decreased. There will be an increased capillary hydrostatic pressure, that is force that pushes the fluid out of the blood capillaries. Oncotic pressure, it pushes the fluid into the blood capillaries, but hydrostatic pressure, it's a force that pushes the fluid out of the blood capillaries. Then there is lymphatic obstruction, there are tissue factors, increased capillary permeability and sodium and water retention. So what is the difference between hydrostatic and oncotic pressure? Hydrostatic pressure refers to the force that is exerted by the fluid inside the blood capillaries against the capillary wall. Oncotic pressure refers to the force that is exerted by albumin and other proteins in the blood vessels. Okay, hydrostatic pressure is against the capillary wall, the fluid inside the capillaries against the capillary wall. Oncotic pressure, the proteins, mainly albumin, so the force exerted by them in the blood vessel. In hydrostatic pressure, the fluids will be pushed out of the blood capillaries. Here the oncotic pressure pushes the fluids into the blood capillaries. Mainly hydrostatic pressure occurs as a result of pressure of blood inside the capillaries, whereas in oncotic pressure it is due to proteins such as albumin. The pressure for hydrostatic pressure is around 30 mmHg, whereas oncotic it is around 20 mmHg. So basically it's a type of fluid pressure, whereas oncotic pressure is a colloid pressure. This hydrostatic pressure occurs at the arterial end of blood capillaries and oncotic pressure at the venular end. Hydrostatic pressure increases the filtration. Here it prevents fluid from leaving the blood capillaries. And hydrostatic pressure aids the supply of nutrients to the tissues of the body. And here the oncotic pressure helps to remove the metabolic waste from the tissues. Our second disturbance, the first disturbance we saw edema. Our second disturbance is dehydration. What is dehydration? State of pure deprivation of water leading to sodium retention and hence a state of hypernatremia. Natremia is sodium. Hypernatremia is increased sodium. In other words, there is only loss of water but no loss of sodium. What are the symptoms? Symptoms will be intense thirst, mental confusion, fever and oliguria. Oliguria is very less output of urine. Our third disturbance is overhydration. First is edema, then dehydration, then overhydration. What do you mean by overhydration? Overhydration is increased extracellular fluid volume due to pure water excess or water intoxication. What are the symptoms? Patients would present with disordered cerebral function as nausea, vomiting, headache, confusion, and in severe cases there will be convulsions, coma, even leading to death. Till now we had been looking into the water component. Now we look into the electrolytes of the internal environment. These are ions that carry an electrical charge. As I mentioned earlier, cations carry a positive charge and anions carry a negative charge. And the major cations in the intracellular fluid is potassium and magnesium, whereas in extracellular fluid is sodium. And the major anions in intracellular fluid is proteins and phosphates. In extracellular it is chlorides and bicarb. So inside the cell you have potassium and phosphates. Outside the cell you have sodium, chlorides and bicarbs. Let's look into the disturbances of electrolytes. We have two compartments, intracellular and extracellular. In the intracellular compartment, as we just now saw, we have a high concentration of potassium, calcium, magnesium and phosphate ions, whereas outside the cell or extracellular fluid, including the serum, has higher concentration of sodium, chloride and bicarbonate ions. In health, in normal health, for electrolyte homeostasis, the concentration of electrolytes in both these compartments should be within normal limits. The electrolytes are maintained by four processes: intake, absorption, distribution and excretion. Disturbance in any of these processes cause electrolyte imbalance. Clinically important electrolyte imbalances are as follows: abnormalities in serum levels of sodium. It can be either hyponatremia or hypernatremia, low or high. Potassium, hypokalemia and hyperkalemia. Calcium, hypocalcemia and hypercalcemia. Magnesium, hypomagnesemia and hypermagnesemia. Acid-base imbalance, abnormalities in pH of blood. So two things we will be seeing here. Metabolism of cells produces carbon dioxide. So usually when cells undergo metabolism, they produce carbon dioxide and metabolic acids. The carbon dioxide, what happens is it combines with water forming carbonic acid. So ultimately during metabolism we have the formation of metabolic acids and carbonic acids. In order to have acid-base homeostasis, to maintain the blood pH at 7.4, both the carbonic acid and the metabolic acids must be excreted from the body, either through the lungs for the carbon dioxide and kidneys for the metabolic acids. I repeat it, through the lungs carbon dioxide is excreted, through the kidneys the metabolic acids are excreted. Abnormalities in acid-base homeostasis. There are 4 principal metabolic syndromes: metabolic acidosis, metabolic alkalosis, respiratory acidosis and respiratory alkalosis. So what is happening in metabolic acidosis? In metabolic acidosis, say for example as in uncontrolled diabetes mellitus. What do you find in uncontrolled diabetes mellitus? You will find ketone bodies which are acidic in nature. So you must have come across diabetic ketoacidosis. So there what happens is there is an increased hydrogen ion concentration. Okay, so naturally there will be a decrease in the bicarbonate level. Because of the high hydrogen ion concentration, what is inside the cell, which cation is more inside the cell? It is potassium. So the hydrogen ions, they exchange with the potassium. So the potassium levels, potassium comes out of the cell and that is seen in an increased amount due to exchange of the hydrogen ions. So you will find potassium levels increased in the serum and you will find a decreased bicarbonate level. That is metabolic acidosis. Metabolic alkalosis, like for example, suppose you have taken some excessive intake of antacids or some carbonated sodas, or also in vomiting. What happens from the gut? Because of vomiting, there is loss of hydrochloric acid. So there is loss of hydrochloric acid. So the hydrogen ion concentrations are less, thereby there is an increase in the bicarbonates. That's why we call it as metabolic alkalosis. Then respiratory acidosis. Respiratory acidosis, say for example there is some kind of a respiratory infection. What happens? There will be this carbon dioxide is not able to be excreted as normal. So this carbon dioxide, I told you that it will combine with water forming carbonic acids. Thereby there is an increase in carbonic acid. That is why respiratory acidosis. Respiratory alkalosis, like for example excessive ventilation or hypoxia, what happens is there will be decreased carbonic acid. That is why we say it is respiratory alkalosis. So these are some of the metabolic syndromes in association with abnormalities in acid-base homeostasis. So we end the class here for today. We will see hemodynamics in the next class. Thank you.